Going live now as Goat vs. Fish. Going live now as Goat vs. Fish. We shall see. We shall see if the GoatFish can go live to all places. Can go live to all places. On the YouTube, yes. On the Twitch, yes. On the Book of Faces, yes. Let us see. Let us see. Oh, this is Goat vs. Fish. We shall see when they come to look at Goat vs. Fish. When they come to look at Goat vs. Fish. Then we will know. Then we will know just how well it go. Just how well it go. And well, 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 what a mighty VsMass it shall be. What a mighty VsMass it shall be. Goat and fish unification. Goat and fish unification. Is it two verses to be true? Is it two verses to be true? Do you even believe in GoatFish? Do you even believe in GoatFish? So many, they no longer believe in GoatFish. They say, GoatFish is just a thing for perhaps a young fence-sitter to believe in. But once you have chosen goat or fish, and you know it is Goat vs. Fish, they say, we no longer believe in GoatFish. We no longer believe in GoatFish. But in the beginning, there was Goat vs. Fish, the GoatFish. It has always been GoatFish. It has always been GoatFish. And Goat vs. Fish said that there should be goat and that there should be fish. Goat vs. Fish streams to you now through the StreamYard of Goat vs. Fish. We think we can be on the Twitch and the YouTube and the Book of Faces all in one verses. And there is one that is viewing Goat vs. Fish from the Book of Faces, and there is two that is viewing Goat vs. Fish on the Twitch, and the verses is just beginning. Have you heard this tune of Goat vs. Fish? Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish is now live on the Twitch. Let us see. Let us see. Let us just check the verses. Where is? Yes, Goat vs. Fish. Yes, Goat vs. Fish. Yes, Goat vs. Fish. Settings. Audio. Yes, there is from coming Goat vs. Fish. There is from coming Goat vs. Fish. Oh, Goat vs. Fish. No, we do not want that verse. We do not want that verses. Yes, we want to be able to hear just how it is. Just how it is. And Goat vs. Fish. Automatically adjust the verses. Well, we shall let it be Goat vs. Fish, just for a verses, just for a verses. Oh, Goat vs. Fish has received a like. Goat vs. Fish has received a like on the Book of Faces. You can chat to Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish can read your chattings to Goat vs. Fish. This is another Goat vs. Fish Thursdays on Goat vs. Fish Thursdays. Used to be just on the Twitch. But now Goat vs. Fish comes live to you. Goat vs. Fish comes live to you in so many places. Yeah. Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish is now live on the Twitch. Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish is now live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Goat vs. Fish comes directly to you. We promise the verses we tell you are true. What's Goat vs. Fish? You haven't a clue. But it is something to do. Does it do for you? Goat vs. Fish. Tyler Lindsay, welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Celebration for Goat with the Goat emote. Toad Milazzo with more fence please, as you please. GoatFish. versus fish. Goat 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 versus fish. Don't sit on the fence. Goat. Don't sit on the fence. Versus. Don't sit on the fence. Fish. Goat fish. Make some noise for the fence sitter. Make some noise for the fence sitter. Look how it sits on the fence. Look how it sits on the fence. Look how the fence post pokes predominantly in its posterior. This fence sitter is perpetually on the fence. It is perpetually on the fence, and yet it does have a sort of fancy grace about it. As it leaps about, but always sitting, leaping but sitting, leaping but sitting. Mukalmira with goat, Mukalmira with goat. Celebration on the Twitch for goat. Goat versus fish is going to be reading from the chat now. Some chats are from the Book of Faces, some chats are from the Twitch, some chats are from the YouTube, and there is also goat versus fish. Here come goat and fish, here come goat and fish. Right down goat versus fish way. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish streams directly to you. How do you do? Goat versus fish, the goat fish. Goat versus fish streams directly to you. Some say goat versus fish is a scam. Some say goat versus fish is a sham. Some say goat versus fish is just spam. But I am what I am. I am what I am. Celebration for Velo Infinity on the Twitch, celebration, yes. This is Goat vs. Fish Thursday again. Goat vs. Fish Thursday again. Goat versus fish. Let us see a versus. Goat versus fish. Yes, goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. No, we want to reduce this versus. Goat versus fish. You have no idea the new verses of goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Yes, how it is. The new complications. Yes, just when you try to make goat versus fish, when you wanted to go to all the places, you wanted to be goat versus fish for all goat and fish, and just when you are trying to make it more goat versus fish, along comes the fence and says, no, you cannot do it in this way. No, it cannot be goat versus fish. But we wanted to be goat versus fish. And that is why we insist upon the verses. Goat versus fish. We are letting the fences get to goat versus fish. This is supposed to be a celebration. Merry Christmas. Is Christ a goat or a fish? This is a question. Is Christ a goat or a fish? Goat versus fish has been wondering this for many verses. If Christ is a goat or a fish. If Christ is a goat. If Christ is a fish. They say one verses many verses ago that one called Christ took a fish and turned it into many fish. Well, goat versus fish can turn a fish into many fish. Look at goat versus fish. You see the fish. Wow, now it is two fish. Goat versus fish can make a fish into many fish. And yet they want to speak of Christ. But you are here for goat versus fish. Velo Infinity, yes. Mukalmira says that Christ is probably goat. Perhaps it is so. Forgotten virtue, it is VsMass Eve. Is it an Eve? Is this what you call an Eve? Is it VsMass Eve Day, or VsMass Day Eve, or the Eve upon the goatfish, or goat versus fish? What is it you are calling your verses? Well, we call it goatfish. It's goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. The cat see celebration, yes, celebration. Come, you can sing with goat versus fish. You can sing with goat versus fish. You can sing along with the goat. You can sing along with the fish. Let's hear it for goat. Be, 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 be. Be, 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 be. Be, be, be. Be, be, be. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat are goat and fish are fish. Goat versus fish is the one simple rule. Goat versus fish should be taught in your school. Of fish versus goat. Of fish versus goat. Let us bring in the verses of GoatFish. Let us ring in the verses of GoatFish. Let us ring in the verses of GoatFish. Let us ring in the verses of GoatFish. Celebration! Celebration! Merry VsMass to you! Yes, Merry VsMass to you. We can say it as many verses as we wish. Merry VsMass to goat. Merry VsMass to fish. Merry VsMass to you. Merry VsMass to goat versus fish. Let us see what they are chatting to goat versus fish. Let's see what they are chatting to goat versus fish. Velu Infinity with the Merry VsMass. Mukul Mira. Yes, it should be taught in school. Yes, yes. You should say, oh, hello to you. Hello. Are you a school of fish? Are you a school of fish? You should teach goat versus fish. You should teach all about goat versus fish. And even the verses that are not about goat versus fish should also be about goat versus fish. And it should just always be about goat versus fish. And the question should be, oh, how does this relate to goat versus fish? And what about the goat? What if you are a fish? But what if you are a goat in this verses? And where is the verses in this verses? Yes, yes. The historical verses. The scientific verses. Yes, yes. The sociological verses. There's so many verses. There are so many verses. And of course, in the verses of Sprots, well, goat versus fish. It is always goat versus fish. It is always goat versus fish in the verses of Sprots, and it is a celebration, and it is a celebration. Goat versus fish. Merry VsMass to all of us. Merry VsMass to all of us. Yes, to all of us. Yes. Well, this is going just versedly. This is going just versedly. We are going to all the places. They are on the Twitch. International Space Bacon with the fish! Space Bacon Fish! Space Bacon Fish! Space Bacon Fish! Yes, yes, the International Space Bacon. Fatty fish, fatty fish, fatty fish. Delicious, salty, fatty fish. International Space Bacon Fish! Oh, we could just consume you. Oh, we could consume you. We could consume you all verses. We could consume you all verses. Yes, International Space Bacon. What have you seen? What have you seen out there, fish? What have you seen out there in international space? Have you seen goat versus fish? Have you seen streaky goat versus fish? Have you seen crispy goat versus fish? We wish to know, we wish to know, we wish to know. What of this International Space Bacon Fish? International Space Bacon Fish. The other emote is goat, the other emote is goat, the other emote is goat. There is goat. If you subscribe to Goat vs. Fish on the Twitch, you can get the Goat vs. Fish goat emote, it is true. Wait just a versus. Goat versus Fish will return to you. Goat versus Fish will return to you. But for now, just remember to still Goat versus Fish. Still Goat versus Fish. Wait a versus for Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. We must stop the fenciness. We must stop the fenciness. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus fish. The fenciness ends now. The fenciness ends now. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. The fenciness ends now. The fenciness ends now. Oh, but what is this? Oh, but what is this? It is another fence sitter. Oh, I am just a poor fence sitter. We wonder, can we join the VsMass celebration? Can we join the VsMass celebration, or is it only for goat and fish? We are feeling so lonely. We are feeling so lonely. The fence sitter just wants to join in with the goat and fish. Just wants to join in for VsMass. Could Goat versus Fish grant this fence sitter a gift? Grant this fence sitter a gift of VsMass, the gift of GoatFish, and just let us be with the goat and the fish. Let us be with the goat and the fish. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say, those in the chat? Should we allow the fence sitter to join in the VsMass celebration? Truly? To join in the VsMass celebration? Is this how it shall be? Is this how it shall be? Goat versus fish. Tell Goat versus Fish if we should welcome this fence sitter. If we should welcome this fence sitter. Goat versus Fish. We are just not so certain, you know. We want the goat and fish to be able to celebrate together. The goat and fish to be able to celebrate. But if we allow this fence sitter in the verses, well, what is to happen? What is to happen? It may try to ruin VsMass. It may try to ruin VsMass. The fence sitter may sit there and say, what is this all about? What is this all about? Goat and fish coming together. It can never happen. It can never happen. Who believes in GoatFish anymore? Who believes in GoatFish anymore? Fence bug. No. Yes. As soon as it starts drinking the fence nog, well, that is when it truly begins. Yes, it can keep its verses for a few verses, but once it has one too many fence nogs, and it just starts saying, I don't like Goat versus Fish, and I don't like VsMass. Why am I even here? Why must we come to these places? Why must we do these things? It's just a celebration. It's just a celebration. Celebrate as you wish. Celebrate as you wish. Mukolmira says we should welcome it in. We shouldn't welcome it in. You'd ruin it. Oh, you say the fence sitter would ruin VsMass. Oh no. The fence sitter would ruin the VsMass. The fence sitter would ruin the VsMass. Goat and fish would not let it in. Just as the VsMass was about to begin. Some say it's a blessing, some would say it's a sin. But are they goat, are they fish? Are they goat, are they fish? Is a blessing and a sin a goat or a fish, or are they a fish and a goat? These are very, very, well, they seem to be ones that the ones are very concerned about on this verses. They are saying, oh, yes, they're bless you, and oh no, do not do this, and do not do that, and we just don't know if they are goat or fish. We suspect that there is no blessing or sin, that there is only goat and fish, there is only goat and fish. Just as there is no alpha or omega, there is no black or white, there is no good or evil, there is only goat and fish. I'm dreaming of a goatfish that is neither black nor white, because there is no white or black, no good, no evil, no plants, no people, and only goat and fish. Once more for the verses. I'm dreaming of a goatfish with Z-Cat-CZ, the eternal dialectic value infinity. That is not the true meaning of VsMass, that it is gleaning. We should show all the fence sitters compassion on these verses, says Velo Infinity. Show the fence sitter compassion on the verses. Save the philosophy for my podcast. That's good shit right there. Velo Infinity. This is Goat vs. Fish. This is Goat vs. Fish. We are not going to save any verses. We are not going to save any verses for our Velo Infinity podcast. It has always been Goat vs. Fish, just as this. Oh, Goat vs. Fish will be there. Goat vs. Fish will be there on the Velo Infinity podcast. On the Velo Infinity podcast. In a future verses. In a future verses of Goat vs. Fish. In January 9 at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But if you think Goat vs. Fish is going to save the verses, we will just have to have a philosophical verses again. We will just have to philosophical verses again. There's always another verses for Goat vs. Fish. There's always another verses to Goat vs. Fish. Nerdy Goose Whitey, welcome to the chat of Goat vs. Fish. It's Goat vs. Fish. And Mighty VsMass. Yes, it is. Yes. Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. How goes the verses? Nerdy Goose Whitey wishing a merry VsMass to all. Goat vs. Fish. Can we see Goat vs. Here comes Goat and Fish. Here comes Goat and Fish. Right down Goat and Fish way. There are so many verses of Goat vs. Fish. They're all really still just Goat vs. Fish. This was the last verses. Look at this last verses that we had just with Von Zivolair. Look at that verses. Mark Hills with the goat on the Book of Faces. Celebration for goat. Yes. Goat Pog. Joy Toy with the Goat Pog. Goat with the Goat Pog. Are you finally getting your joyous toyous goat for VsMass? Are you finally getting it for VsMass, Joy Toy Goat? We have a plenty. The verses looks at, it was plenty of verses. Goat vs. Fish, it was plenty of verses. Yes, it is a celebration. But soon, as Goat vs. Fish Thursday is beginning, soon we shall go to Forgotten's Virtue. Yes, wow, huge verses. Oh yes, it was a huge verses. Even look at all the fence sitters. Yes, so some are saying we shall have to picture it, but soon we go to Forgotten Virtue for Goat vs. Fish Thursday, but then we will return to Goat vs. Fish and we will have more celebrations. This has been an excellent verses. But tell us, what do you wish for VsMass? We would wish there would be some consensus as to whether or not we welcome this fence sitter. Some say, welcome the fence sitter. It is in the spirit, as you do say, is a spirit to goat for a fish. Of VsMass, you say, welcome the fence sitter. Others say, no, do not welcome the fence sitter. It is up to you. There's so many fence sitters we could welcome. There's the Narwhalish fence sitter. Swims like a fish, has a horn like a goat. Yes, and there's this one. You can count on this one to spike the verses with a little bit of fence. Why do I have to do this stupid stuff? Yes. Bojackal Horselpop is here to be fancy, and to spike the verses, with a little bit of fence. Yes, you know, when you spike the verses, the goat and fish, they can start as goatfish. They say, we are goatfish. Oh, yes, we are goatfish. But then once you spike the verses, then they begin to verses again. But it can also be the reverse, where it is goat versus fish, it is goat versus fish. And they drink up the spiked verses, spiked with the spike, you know, the spike of the fence, and then they say, why are we versing? Oh, we love one another, yes. And they put their hooves and their fins around each other, and they sing of goatfish, and they sing, may older verses be forgot and never on the fence. And then they become goat and fish together. Goat vs. Fish. On Goat vs. Fish Thursday is live on the Twitch. Nerdy Goose has something to say. Nerdy Goose the fish says, as fishy queen, I declare a unity this VsMass, a unity of VsMass it does declare. Do any goat care? I'm just gonna have a super chill verse, miss. I wish for just the right verses, says Forgotten Virtue. 3.5 hours until Versmiss for me? Well, if that's just how it be, between you and Goat versus Fish, and the goat and the fish, it shall be Versmiss, all Versmiss. It shall be Versmiss, all Versmiss. Yes, you say, oh, you are counting your verses. You say, well, in this zone of Goat versus Fish, it is not yet Versmiss, but in this zone of Goat versus Fish, it is already Versmiss. And there it is pre-Versmiss, and there it is post-Goat-Fish, and there it is. But if we divide the goat and fish by the fence, then we have to calculation. It is already Versmiss. It is already Versmiss with Goat versus Fish. It is already GoatFish. It is already GoatFish. This is what we are telling you. This is what we are telling you. Do you not believe Goat versus Fish? Do you not believe Goat versus Fish? We do not know. We do not know. We do not know what a Christmas is. A Christmas is some other. We think that the Christmas is they saw GoatFish because in the beginning there was Goat versus Fish, and they had an interpretation of Goat versus Fish, the GoatFish. And then they created this Christmas as because they were trying to reckon with Goat versus Fish. They were trying to perceive Goat versus Fish, and this is their interpretation of Goat versus Fish. But apart from Christ making fish, because we do not know. Perhaps there is a goat in there. Perhaps there is a goat in there somewhere. But apart from that verses, we wonder. Are they still with Goat versus Fish? Are they still with Goat versus Fish? Or has their interpretation of Goat versus Fish strayed so far from Goat versus Fish that it is no longer Goat versus Fish as we can perceive it? Yes, we must show them again the way to Goat versus Fish. A way to Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish is the one simple rule. Goat versus Fish should be taught in your school of fish. Versus Goat. Fish versus Goat. Merry Versmiss from South Africa. 3 hours 30 minuets to go for me. Yes. You can wait for it if you wish, but you can also just shout it. You can just shout, mighty Versmiss, mighty Versmiss, mighty GoatFish, mighty GoatFish. You can just shout it whenever you wish. You can shout it whenever you wish. They may look at you and they say, oh, Versmiss is not for 7 verses. But you can celebrate Goat versus Fish whenever you wish. You can always celebrate Goat versus Fish. Look, Goat versus Fish is celebrating Goat versus Fish now. Yes, Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish and Fish versus Goat. Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish. Celebration, Gideon Dam, welcome to Goat versus Fish. Are you goat or are you fish? Forgotten's Virtue, we wonder if Forgotten's Virtue is ready for Goat versus Fish. If Forgotten's Virtue is ready for Goat versus Fish. It seems to Goat versus Fish, it is still in preparation. Ah, there is Goat versus Fish. There is Goat versus Fish. Now this Goat versus Fish Thursday, it has fallen on Versmiss. It has fallen on Versmiss Deve. It has fallen on Versmiss Deve. But it is still Goat versus Fish Thursday. You can look at it no matter which way, but it is Goat versus Fish Thursday. And on Goat versus Fish Thursday, there is one that is called Forgotten Virtue. There is one that is called Forgotten Virtue. Now, it may have forgotten its virtue long ago. But in recent verses, it has been remembering its verses and has been choosing Goat or Fish, and it is a celebration. Goat versus Fish, Goat versus Fish. Ooh. And look at this. Velo Infinity with a powerful goat and B and D Bevin spiked Bodin with goat on the Book of Faces, And Goat versus Fish. You have a verses to give. Forgotten Virtue has a verses to give. Well, we should go in to see. International Space Bacon. When I clock out of work in 1.5 hours, Versmiss shall begin for me. This is getting me in the spirit. Well, enjoy Goat versus Fish. If you call Goat versus Fish a spirit, that is up to you. We just call it Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. We'll send links to you now. Yes, remember Goat versus Fish. Remember Goat versus Fish. Remember Goat versus Fish. The shirts of Goat vs. Fish have arrived. The shirts of Goat vs. Fish have arrived. If for VsMass you wish to order yourself a celebration of the merch of Goat vs. Fish, you can order the merch of Goat vs. Fish. Or you can just follow Goat vs. Fish or subscribe to Goat vs. Fish. Or you can just be here for the celebration. Do not despair. But soon we are going to Forgotten Virtue. Soon we are going to Forgotten Virtue. In fact, we shall go there now. In fact, we shall go there now. Let us not keep it waiting. Let us not keep it waiting. Goat vs. Fish Thursdays. This has been a versus of Goat vs. Fish. Have you had enough fun? You say no, 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 no. The verses, they've just begun. The verses. Goat vs. Fish VsMass has just begun. They've just begun, oh yes it is so. For Goat vs. Fish Thursday continues, you know. Goat vs. Fish will be back for more. And then we'll start keeping score. And then we'll start keeping score with Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish all day and all night. Goat vs. Fish with all of your might. It's Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. Welcome to the VsMass. Welcome to the VsMass. And now we go to Forgotten Virtue. And now we go to Forgotten Virtue. With the raid, be sure to tell it if you are goat or fish. Now the ones that are on the YouTube and the Book of Faces, you will not be able to perceive this. But the ones on the Twitch, Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish will say this. If you are watching Goat vs. Fish on the Book of Faces and the YouTube, we celebrate you. We celebrate you. But you should know, you should go to the Goat vs. Fish live streams on Goat vs. Fish, twitch.tv/Goat vs. Fish. Yes, there you can really get some Goat vs. Fish. You can really get some Goat vs. Fish. But now we shall see you. Forgotten Virtue, hope you and your family have a wonderful VsMass. Yes, well, you can wish it yourself. You can wish it yourself. Because we are going to raid Forgotten Virtue. And it is going to be Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. Celebration. Yes. Ooh, as soft as Goat vs. Fish. As soft as Goat vs. Fish. Ooh, as soft as Goat vs. Fish. We shall see you soon. All you who are here with Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish will return. But for now, we go to Forgotten Virtue. Let us get ready to raid Forgotten Virtue. Let us get ready to raid Forgotten Virtue. Is it on the Twitch? Yes, it is on the Twitch. Preparation. Let us see if Forgotten Virtue is a fence sitter even on VsMass. Goat vs. Fish. We raid the verses. We raid Forgotten's Virtue. And now we go into, it is still live on the Book of Faces, and it is still live on the YouTube. It is still there. For a versus, little bit, the Chihuahua and Kenneth triplet. Did you get a goat or a fish for VsMass? Excellent question. Did you get a goat or a fish for VsMass? Excellent question. Goat vs. Fish wants to know if you got a goat or a fish for VsMass. And Goat vs. Fish, yes, Goat vs. Fish. But Goat vs. Fish will bid you adieu. Even though the versus has just begun, little bit, Chihuahua. But there is one on the Twitch that Goat vs. Fish did just raid. So please, yes, thank you for being here with Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish will return again to be streaming more, perhaps around noons or noons 30 Pacific Standard Time, and then again later in the verses after Julie and Mr. Humdinger on the Twitch. This is Goat vs. Fish Thursday, but do not despair. There shall be more Goat vs. Fish. There shall be more goat versus fish. Celebration for goat versus fish! Yes, estimated time. Yes, we suppose that it shall be around noon or noon 30 Pacific Standard Time for brief verses. And then for the final verses, we are going to be celebrating all night with goat versus fish. All night with goat versus fish. So perhaps around 4s or 5s Pacific Standard Times, or somewhere we should say around 5s Pacific Standard Time. It will begin a celebration of GoatFish that will last all verses, that will last a long verses, and you can join us there. We shall see you in the verses of Goat versus Fish. I want to take my Chihuahua's official mascot of the Goat versus Fish. Well, you should ask them first if they are goat or fish. Yes, you can take a picture of them, and then you can go to the Instagram or the Twitterver, the Book of Faces, and you can say, oh look, this one is goat and this one is fish. We shall see you in the verses. Goat versus fish.